Anyway, Mr. Barry Cahill, I'm always amazed by him, and we like each other, we love each other, and I'm so inspired by Barry because he really does walk his talk. And yes, you do. So let's have a big hand for Mr. Barry Cahill.
Thank you. Are we on here? Yes, we are. Okay, I have to get this to where it's close because there we go. No, there we don't go. There we go. All right. So my talk today is about universal religion. Is there such a thing? Let's start with the word religion. What exactly is religion? Well, I was asking that question and I went to the source of all wisdom, the American Heritage Dictionary, which defines it as, and I'm quoting here, an organized system of beliefs and rituals centered on a supernatural or supreme being. Good enough. The origin comes from a Latin word, two Latin words, re, and then ligio, which means to connect or bind together again. My saxophone mouthpiece has a ligature on it, holds the reed onto the mouthpiece. Our bodies have ligaments that hold our bones together. And basically what they're saying is the purpose of religion is to reconnect us to our divine source. But is that what most religions do today? I don't know. I would maintain that, at least on the surface, many religions tend to, as George Costanza once said, do the opposite. They divide us from our inner divinity, that say that we are sinners, we are worthless, but through Jesus we have salvation. Or something along those lines, depending on which religion you ascribe to. And of course, they divide us from one another. I mean, we've had numerous religious wars. I think we've just gotten involved in another one. You could say that part of the reason for this war is religious. And yet I maintain that at the heart of all religions, there is a core of teachings and practices that help us to do, as religion suggests, reconnect with the divine, or more precisely, the divine aspect of ourselves, as the Apostle Paul said, the Christ in you. The founder of Unity, one of the co-founders, I should say, Charles Fillmore, early in the founding of this teaching, made the bold statements that we have within us the potential to do everything Jesus did. That was a bold statement back then. People didn't typically talk like that in those days. I'm talking the 1890s here. Most of the world's religions have within their fold one or more mystical sects. They have contemplative orders, monks and nuns that have turned away from the worldly in order to pursue the divine. And this practice is commonly known as mysticism. And again, from the American Heritage Dictionary, mysticism is defined as a spiritual discipline aiming at union with the divine through deep meditation and or contemplation. And I would say this is the universal religion because it is part of all the apparently different religions. The German teacher Meister Eckhart called the process of enlightenment one of subtraction, not addition. It really gets you thinking, doesn't it? We don't have to add something to ourselves. We already are that. We could say that all spiritual teachers had a direct connection to spirit and created their religion out of that connection in service to the enlightenment of all. A few of the better known mystical orders are the Sufis within the Muslim tradition, the yogis and swamis within what is broadly referred to as Hinduism, the contemplative orders of Christianity, of which Meister Eckhart was certainly one. By the way, he was saying all this stuff back in 1270, 1280, back in what we would consider as the beginning of the Renaissance. And mostly within the Catholic and Orthodox churches, we have contemplative orders like the Franciscans, the Jesuits, and many, many others. Buddhism has mystical sects within its fold, too many to list here. And I could go on, but you get the idea that this is part of all of the world's religions, a contemplative, mystical approach. In other words, a personal experience of the divine. But what about people like us who seek a deeper spiritual experience and connection, but we have commitments in the world? We can't just up and leave and join a monastery, or like the Buddha, go and meditate in a forest. You know, the Buddha said, basically, dang it, I'm going to sit here and meditate until I become enlightened, until I figure this thing out. It took him 12 years. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, but he finally got there. But that was 24/7 commitment, man. But there are still practices that the average person can do that, if practiced consistently, can yield these kinds of results. We do it here every day. We do it twice here, don't we? A little short one, and then we do a longer one. Show of hands, how many people here have some kind of a meditation practice? Yeah? And how many of you are really, really consistent with it? I was kind of lucky. I was an early adopter of this technology. When I was 19 years old, my brother got involved in the TM movement. Anybody here ever get initiated into transcendental meditation back in the day? It was quite the rage. You know, the Beatles were doing it, a lot of famous people. And I'm really glad I had that experience. Now I have my issues with the organization around it, but the practice itself I thought was very, very effective. You know, after that, I began, and I think it was because of the meditation, I started getting into stuff like unity, religious science, the writings of Manly Palmer Hall, the Philosophical Research Society, theosophy, and found a lot of commonality among these teachings. The biggest one, of course, being that we are spirit. All of us that are here are seeking higher knowledge, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And here's the irony. The great mystics maintain that there is actually nothing to seek. We can call off the search because spirit is, in fact, who and what we are. It's not an object out in space that we must go out and find. When great religious figures like Moses, Jesus, or Muhammad went to the mountaintop and saw God, I believe this is a metaphor for going to that highest place within ourselves to reconnect, to religio, with that which has been there all along. I went on the Unity website and I found something really interesting here. It was by Jan Phillips. She's an acquaintance of ours. We've met her, and she is probably best known for writing the book The Artist's Way. But she wrote this really great article called Mysticism, Mindfulness, and the Act of Mattering. You know, like Black Lives Matter, that kind of mattering. And I thought this was really brilliant. She says, don't think of yourself as a seeker trying to find something or someone. Imagine the light making its way into your bones and marrow. A fish does not seek water. A bird does not seek air. And a mystic, by extension, does not seek God. There is nothing to seek. There is nothing to long for. The union already exists. We just have to open the door to it. And it's a little different each day, like love itself. Sometimes subtle, barely there, a calm breeze. Sometimes all riled up and full of fury. I like that. Sometimes a stream of loveliness, quiet, and inner pulsating. So, if you're curious, you may be wondering how. Well, as I said, the key is meditation, a consistent and regular practice. And if you want to enhance your meditation practices with yogic postures or breathing exercises or reading the great works of great spiritual teachers, so much the better. But remember, keep this in mind, the whole purpose of meditation is to get the mind to shut up. How many of you have sat there in meditation and it's like, blah, 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 would you please? Hey, don't forget about this. You got to mow the lawn today, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Now, I don't mean to be glib here, but all mystical teachings maintain that spirit is who and what we are at our essence. But the ego veils the spirit from our experience. We don't live it. Once in a while, we might have that little glimpse through the keyhole into the next room of a larger consciousness. But most of the time, you sit down to meditate. What do I need to put on my grocery list? Oh, don't forget about the milk. But imagine, I'm going to borrow Plato's famous metaphor here. Imagine you've been living in a cave all your life. And that cave has like a waterfall at the mouth of it, the entrance. And you might be inclined to believe, if you've been raised in that environment, that the cave and the shadows on the wall and the waterfall, that's all that exists. There's nothing else. This is it. But then one day, let's say the waterfall stops. Maybe they build a dam upstream, or there's been a drought. And you look out that mouth of that cave and you go, oh my God, there's a whole world out there. Look, what are those green tall things called? Those are trees. And suddenly, you're aware of a whole new dimension of reality. But it's always been there. That's the thing. It's always been there. Just beyond the noise and the visual obscuration of the waterfall. So this is what meditation is designed to do, to stop the waterfall. To, metaphorically speaking, slow that incessant gush of thoughts that just keep coming up and up and up and up. To slowly expand the space and time between thoughts. And when you enter into that silence, eventually you experience God. Now, how that experience will unfold for you is a highly individualized matter. But one thing that you can absolutely guarantee is there will be a profound sense of peace, and that all is right with the world, and that all my little problems just don't matter. Sometimes you will hear a sound. It's been referred to as the holy Nad, N-A-H-D, or Shabad, the silent sound of spirit. And as one is absorbed into that silent sound, we begin to feel our unifying connection with infinite mind, or if you prefer, God, being, or spirit. And as we begin to feel that, there is an energy that comes into play that, again, carries with it profound peace, love, a sense of connection to everything around you. And ironically, this can happen in an instant, or it might take years of meditation. Eckhart Tolle talks about being in a state of continuous agitation, continuous depression and anxiety, until one day it became too much for him. And in that moment, his mind just simply shut down. And he had an instantaneous experience of enlightenment. But regardless of how it happens, no matter how long it takes, it's worth it. To get that connectedness with spirit at your very core, that you are indeed one with the universe, is, I think, the very purpose of life in the physical realm. So if you ever wonder what the purpose of life is, the mystics have been telling us all along. It's to get back to spirit. And Frank Sinatra, I think, said it best in this famous song, New York, New York. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. If you can maintain spiritual poise and equanimity and that sense of connectedness here in this world of crazy stuff that goes on, you can do it in any plane of existence. This is why Buddha talked about the preciousness of a human life. Human beings are the only ones, the only species on the planet that can bring spirit down into the physical realm. Jesus demonstrated this time and time again, as have other great masters. To bring the enlightened state into the physical is difficult, to say the least, but it is possible. As Emerson so famously said, do the thing, and you will have the power. I think he was really talking about do the meditation and you will reconnect with spirit. And as all the great religious teachers have said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, then all other things will be added to you. And this is not a statement of, oh, get enlightenment so you can have lots of money and stuff. That's not the point. When they talk about power, they talk about that infinite sense of connectedness, and that all your actions, all your desires flow from a place of the will of God, flow from a place of infinite wisdom. And therefore, you may find yourself desiring a lot less stuff. And you may find yourself perfectly at peace with whatever comes your way. So join me in a little experiment. We've done this a little earlier, but I want to take it a step deeper. Now, if you already have a formal meditation practice, feel free to do that. And allow what I'm about to say to inform you and to enhance that practice. And if you don't have a formal meditation practice, this is a really good place to start. So sit erect but relaxed. Let your back come up straight but not tense. Relax. Breathe deep into the belly, allowing the diaphragm to drop and this to expand, but not up into the ribs. Just let that kind of be there. Now, most importantly, feel the air entering and exiting with each breath. And feel into the body. I like to start with the hands, and then just feel the aliveness in your hands. Feel how there's a little tingling vibration there. That is your life force. Let that feeling expand up the arms, up across the shoulders, up into the neck and head, and feel the aliveness there. Let your attention then go down into the chest. Feel your heartbeat, and again, feel your breathing. And as you drop your diaphragm and expand your belly, let your attention go down into the abdomen. And then down into the legs and to the very soles of your feet. Now, this is important. Feel the body as one continuous energy field. And with each breath, feel how that energy field expands out from the body a little bit. Thoughts will arise. Watch them, let them go, like clouds crossing the infinite sky. But always come back to the feeling of the body. If you'd like to use a mantra to repeat, one of my favorites is Shalom. Sha on the inhale, Lom on the exhale. The peace which passeth all understanding. And when you get to the bottom of the exhale, silence. And again, come back to the feeling of the energy within the body. Good. Now let's come back to the room. How many of you, by show of hands, notice your thoughts slow way down? How many of you noticed a profound sense of peace? Yeah. You know, when you take a plain old iron bar and you point it north and south and tap it a few times with a hammer, it will become a magnet. It will not stay a magnet, but if you do that repeatedly every day, it will stay a magnet. Scientific fact. So, this is kind of what we're doing. We're putting ourselves in the field of the divine, taking a little bit of it in to connect with that which is already there. Do this every day, it becomes a part of your personal identity, and we begin to lose that shell of the ego and begin to function more from a place of spirit. Also, you can do this at night. It's a really good time to do it as you lie in bed and you know your mind's kind of tossing and turning about the day. I should have said this, I should have done that. That's fine. Watch those thoughts and let them go, and come back to this practice as you go off to sleep. You may find that you have informative dreams and you remember them in the morning. And you may find that you just sleep better, deeper, more sound, and wake up more refreshed. Now, just a little word of caution. Being mystically connected at a deep level will not solve your problems. What it will do is help you cope with your problems and deal with them in a more effective, creating, and peaceful way. A great Indian sage once said, "The solution to all problems lies in the realization that there are no problems." Yeah, situations to be dealt with, for sure. But let's not turn them into problems. Let's not make them something in our ego mind that they really aren't. And as you continue your journey into the mystical experience, be patient with yourself. This is important. The ego mind is kind of like a flywheel on an engine. It has mass, it has momentum, and it will want to keep you involved at the level of the ego. But if you can practice witnessing the ego, watching it, as if it were some little petulant 3-year-old throwing a temper tantrum and doing its little ego dance, then by the simple act of witnessing it, you have stepped into a higher dimension. The ego will lose its grip as your self-identity by the mere act of witnessing it. That is why meditation is the key. It is the very practice of witnessing your thoughts and letting them go, rather than identifying with your thoughts as, that's me. You are not your thoughts. Your brain creates your thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You are something higher and more universal than that. Michelangelo was once asked, "How did you create that statue of David? It's magnificent." And he was working with a piece of marble that had a big crack in it. And he said, "Well, I didn't really carve the statue. I just removed all the excess and released David from the big block of marble." Similarly, we can do the same thing. We can chip away every day at the stranglehold that the ego has on most people and on ourselves. Now, here's a cool thing you can do. Outside the meditation chamber, wherever that might be, you may find yourself waiting in the doctor's office or in the DMV, and you've got a couple of minutes where nothing much is going on. Well, instead of pulling out your phone, why not sit there and do a brief meditation? You don't even have to close your eyes. You can be a witness to what's going on around you. I like to do this on long drives. Obviously with my eyes open and when there's no traffic around. I just focus on my breathing, focus on my energy field. And it's interesting, sometimes little intuitive thoughts bubble up. One time I got the idea, I better slow down. I slowed down, and sure enough, right over the hill, there was a traffic jam. Nothing but brake lights up ahead. And this was on I-15 out in the middle of nowhere. So you could say my intuition helped me to avoid an accident, because if I'd just been cruising along at 70, who knows? So there it is, folks. News you can use. The mystical experience is available to all of us. And the more we dip into this holy silence, the greater our awareness, the higher our consciousness will be out in the world. And the greater our awareness, the more peaceful, the more powerful, and the more prosperous we will become in the world. Again, to quote Meister Eckhart, he said, this is so brilliant, imagine somebody thinking like this in 1260, like right after the darkest of ages, right? He said, when the soul wants to have an experience of something, it throws out an image of that experience ahead of itself and steps into that image. Wow. There's a new thought guy 1,000 years ago. Amazing. So I want to leave you with that. Practice meditation. Create the world you want to create from the deepest part of yourself and step into that creation. Namaste, and so it is.